to this wonderful celebration of our new historical collection. And of course, I'm very grateful to Dr. Tracy for having spearheaded it. So I want to make a few comments about that before Dr. Tracy comes up and offers his reflections. Gerry Tracy is hiding behind me here. I have two Gerrys behind me. They're both going to be speaking. Gerry Tracy is passionate about many things. He's passionate, of course, about his family. He is passionate about proper physical examination and particularly auscultation of the heart. And he is passionate about history. This is certainly not limited to the history of this medical school, of which, of course, he is very passionate. And he's been a founder and a regional dean and an esteemed teacher and an advocate for the faculty. And it's not even limited to medical history, because for which his passion, of course, is deep, as you can see today. He loves all history, going back to Roman history and beyond, and of course, Irish history. And so I know that Gerry is fond of several quotes about history, and you know these quotes. You could probably say the one I'm going to give next, which is in fact, credited to George Santayana, which is that those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it. And then, of course, the variation on that is attributed to Mark Twain, despite the fact that there's absolutely no evidence that Mark Twain ever wrote or said it, which is that history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And of course, when you were living in history, as we are now, one sometimes is tempted to say that I would prefer blank verse to rhyming couplets. But both of those imply that history is not irrelevant, that it is very relevant to the present, and that in fact that it isn't even past, which brings up another quote that I'm sure Gerry will be tapping me on the shoulder to remind me that Faulkner said, "The past is never dead, in fact it's not even past." And so when we look at this historical collection, and when I look at it as someone who shares Gerry's love of history and deep belief that it is important for people in general to have some context for the world in which they live. And without a sense of history, you cannot put the world in context. And we live in a world now, in medicine, where traditionalists like me and Billy Obst and Gerry Tracy fear that physical examination skills are falling by the wayside, not in the case of the graduates of our school, but how many of you have been out there in your doctor's offices and had your heart or lungs examined through your shirt? When that happens, you know your doctor's not really listening. But these days, the auscultation of the heart and lungs is not as important as the cardiac echo, which seems to have replaced some of our skills of physical examination. But looking at these stethoscopes, and earlier today we had otophones out there, which are not sitting there at the moment, but that's because this collection will rotate, apparently daily. Reminds me that there was a time in medicine, and maybe not that long ago, when the skills of physical observation were really critical. And the giants of the past that are celebrated in this collection, like Dr. Troop and Dr. Everhart, and the giants of the present, like Dr. Dudrick and Dr. Tracy, all have in common that in addition to their wonderful talents and their wonderful scientific knowledge, they were masters at physical observation. Visual, auditory, tactile, even olfactory observation is important in physical diagnosis. And looking at historical artifacts reminds us of that. So these are the kinds of reflections that are stimulated in me when I look at this wonderful collection. And another thing about this wonderful collection that I am really thrilled about is that it celebrates the connection of this medical school, which we all love, to two of the most significant giants in the history of 20th century medicine. Sir William Osler, in the first 2 decades of the 20th century, and Dr. Stanley Dudrick in the last third of the 20th century, both connected to this school. So, Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine is grateful to the Luzerne County Medical Society and to the multiple donors, many of whom, maybe all of whom, are here among us today, listed in your program, who have donated some of these artifacts. And also to Alan Goldstein, who is hiding among us, hiding in plain sight, for having helped to, who's a great friend of the school, for having helped make this collection possible. But of course, once again, grateful to GerryTracy, without whom we would not have the honor of housing it. And so you will now be hearing from two different Gerrys, and the first one will be GerryTracy.
Thank you. I just had a knee replaced, so I'm dopier than usual, so I apologize up front. This is going to be very brief. The first part is housekeeping, and it's thanking folks, and I'm not going to spend too much time because there are so many people to thank. Undoubtedly, I would forget some, even if I tried. As you could see, our collection has really grown from basically nothing to what you see tonight. We are trying to categorize everything. We're going to try to rotate the objects that we have on view, so we do our best to get everybody included. But I wanted to especially thank, is she behind me, Kara? Madrika from development, who has been absolutely instrumental in this. But the most important person thus far has been Iris Johnston, who's over here. Iris could do just about everything in a friendly way, and makes me look a little bit smart, which is hard to do. John from facilities has helped us in an enormous way. And I also want to thank the Scranton Times Tribune. They've been very, very good to us. To give you an example, the articles that you saw emanating from this were picked up by the Associated Press, and they've been published in many cities throughout the United States. And we're also going to be featured this summer or spring in the Pennsylvania Medical Society big publication, along with the Mutter Museum from Jefferson, which is the most famous medical museum in the world. So we're pretty good company, and that's thanks to a large extent the work of Mr. O'Connell. Geisinger has helped significantly, particularly their archivist. Katie Heilman has been a major, major help. Now, I know I missed some folks, and I apologize, okay? But I want to get to my short 4 vignettes so I could finish. How did this happen? Dr. Scheinman kind of opened the door for me. The one thing we've had from the beginning is the backing of development, Maurice Garofalo, and Dr. Scheinman. But what really got us going was about 1.5 years ago, the County Medical Society was closing its office. And they called me up and said, we have 150 years worth of publications in Lackawanna medicine. Would you folks be interested at the school? I said yes, on behalf of Dr. Scheinman, and up came 7 huge boxes. Now, my wife, who was of invaluable aid to me, when I explained this to her, she said, why did you get 7 big boxes of 150 years? And I gave my usual intelligent answer, I have no idea. But in any event, I plowed through the 150 years. And as I was doing it, I began to realize that a lot of wonderful folks have gone before us. Almost all of us don't know who they are. And without them, we wouldn't be here tonight. So in picking out a few, it was very, very difficult. My friend Bob right back there would have made the first team, but he's alive. If he didn't, he wouldn't be on the first team. Doesn't transcend age. But we try to pick people going back in time, and it's kind of fun to identify these folks, and I would ask you to read the bios on them. It's just fascinating reading, I think. The second major breakthrough was Luzerne County. About 30 or 40 years ago, I was visiting down there, and they had a wonderful historical display. Modest, but wonderful. And I never forgot it. And then they sold their building and put the display in boxes somewhere in Luzerne County. And thankfully, Bill Yobst helped a lot on this. And we contacted Luzerne and said, would you all be interested in maybe donating this type material to our medical school, which transcends the counties? And lo and behold, up came 2 big boxes from the Luzerne County Medical Society. And Iris Johnston, who has reviewed everything, opened them and found a very interesting letter. 3/4 page, typed, beautifully written. You had a hard time making out the signature. She called me down, and I got all excited because it was pretty obvious that it was William Osler. At the later part of his career, he went to England, and he taught there at Oxford. And he was writing another gentleman who's very, very important tonight. It's Lewis Taylor, congratulating him, and a copy of that letter is in the display case. So that was a major find. I have no idea how valuable that letter is. And if anybody thinks they're going to steal it, they could, but that's not the original. It's a copy, so don't even think of it. But that really set us on our way with a wonderful collection. I want to point out that the Wilkes-Barre collection is one of the oldest in the United States. And some of the instruments that you're seeing highlighted go back to the Civil War. So this is not a Johnny-come-lately type collection. And that leads to my third anecdote. He's standing over here, Mr. McDonough from Wilkes-Barre, and he called me one day, and he said, I understand you folks are interested in medical history, and particularly Dr. Taylor, Lewis Taylor. Well, interested in was the understatement of the universe. Lewis Taylor started the collection that you're seeing tonight in 1915. And it was to Taylor that Osler sent the letter. And the reason Osler was so interested, I think, was he was one of the founders of the American Association of Medical Libraries and Museums. Somewhere along the line, I was given the misinformation, I think, that this is the oldest collection in the country. So if not the oldest, it's close. But in any event, that was an amazing find to get this antique instruments with William Osler's imprimatur on it. And I don't think many places have that kind of firepower. And just to add to it, although he said he's only loaning it to me, but maybe we could talk at the end.
Big bucks, Doc, big bucks.
Yeah, well, Dr. Scheiman has. We don't get it on payment for wages. This is the book he just gave me, which is full of stuff, including a lot from Dr. Guthrie, who founded the Guthrie Clinic. So the reason I'm telling you this is feeding on itself, that people have come out of the woodwork to show interest and show support. And without them, we'd have nothing. The final vignette, thank goodness, got a call from Mrs. Herman Gerry. Now, I don't know how many of you knew Herman Gerry, but he was a doctor's doctor. He was an OBGYN, primarily at CMC, and one of the nicest men that I ever met. Great guy. And his wife said that he had designated where his belongings after he died would go, except for one major thing, and it was his collection of medical artifacts. And she said, might you be interested? And our standard answer is, you betcha. And any event, we, again, Kara went out to her place. But the reason why I think it's so poignant is tons of stuff. Most of it's down in this corner behind you. But I thought what was really impressive to me In the middle of this display, which he himself did, was an invitation to the open house of the opening of the school. I think that's cool. So it's only right and just that his collection is in this school. So what we've done with this then is, you're going to hear about the future. I'm just giving you a little of the past. We have to remember the past. Thank you very, very much for coming tonight, and particularly those of you who have been so generous with donations.